Hello, welcome back to the latest episode of You Are My Borough with myself, Dom Shaw, and Scott Wilson, back together for the first time in a few weeks. At Mark on last week, we had Rob Edwards interrupting us the week before, and just back to us. He was good. I know we're going back a couple of weeks, but Rob Edwards was really good, wasn't he? I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was good. It was really, really good. I mean, there's a lot of people said on the comments, first up, fair play to him for doing it. I'm sure he's got a million and one things he'd rather be doing than messing around with us two clowns. But fair play, he did it. And I think it is important that the Borough boss gets himself out there and does things like our pod, other pods. Obviously, in the studio with Mark at teas and kind of in and around the supporters meetings and supporters branch meetings and all of that. I think that is really important. I always have done. And some Borough managers have really taken to that side of things. Others haven't. And, Rob Edwards clearly gets how important the relationship between the fans and the club is. And I think also just probably gets that it actually does him a bit of good as well to just be out there and in amongst it and for people to see how much he cares about it and how involved he is. I think it does him some good as well. I can never really get my head around when managers ignore that side of things because, fans want to see that their manager gets it and cares as much as they do.
Results will always dictate the mood in the stands. There's no doubt about that. Everybody knows that. But Edwards doing what he's done since he's come in, doing the fan event, speaking to clowns like us, as you say, on the pod, like just being a voice to the fans, that undoubtedly adds to the feel-good factor and helps build that unity that has been important in the early weeks of the season. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, listen, if Borough are winning every match, then it kind of everything else around the sides is not irrelevant. But it's you can get away with an awful lot when you're winning football matches. But when times get a bit tougher, or when there are difficult decisions to be made, or when it's real crunch point in the season, then that's when I think that the relationship that's there, what the fans think about the manager and the team, how much positivity is there around the club as a whole, all of that matters, and it definitely feeds into things. And you see it time and time again that certain clubs, Rob Edwards will quite openly say they have this at Luton, that they just get on a wave and everyone's pulling in the same direction and the whole thing just starts to generate its own steam. And it makes, that can take a club an awful long way. Now, again, I come back to ultimately results make a massive difference. They always will. You can't really get away from that. But all of that can have an influence on results and can have an influence on like I say, how the club feels and what the club's all about.
And as we talk about results, here we are reflecting on the first league defeat of the season at Portsmouth at the weekend. Going into the last international break, I remember talking about how, you try and put a positive spin on it, but it felt like a bad time for a break. You just wanted to keep rolling on. Inevitable subject for us to chat about when it comes to a break every time, but it does feel like a better time, I think, doesn't it, for Borough just to take stock and take a breather and reflect.
Yeah, because in isolation, the draw at Southampton and the home draw with Stoke were okay. You know what I mean? They were fine. They were by no means disastrous. But put the three together with Portsmouth, and all of a sudden, 2 points from 9, and it did just feel like, well, running out of steam's probably over-egging it, but the early momentum had started to wane. I think we could certainly say that, and questions are now appearing of, what's he going to do with the attack? How stretched has this defence become? Does the midfield need a freshen up? What's the form? There's a number of things now that are out there and that Rob Edwards will be thinking about and pondering and weighing up. And the break just feels like a good time to do it. And also, like you say, while there has been some chopping and changing, there is a core of players who have pretty much played right the way through this season. And I'm sure they're now ready just for a little bit of a refresh, mentally more than anything else. I know fans will always say, God, they're professional footballers. If they can't run around, yeah, that's fine. Physically, the players are absolutely fine. But mentally, the championship it is a slog. It does take a toll. And so these little periods just to take a little step back, You know, I thought it was interesting that after Portsmouth, Rob Edwards basically said for the first half of this week, I want my players to go away. I want them to go away. I want them to switch off. I want them to forget all about football. Then we got bags of time to get them in, work on a few things, start preparing for Ipswich. And that feels right, doesn't it? You know, I think they've certainly earned that break. And I think a few of them probably just need it.
The main talking point since the weekend, and I guess going into the weekend to a certain extent as well, although Boro hadn't lost, they hadn't scored at Stoke, they'd only scored a single goal at Southampton, was the attack and getting the right blend in the attack.
Yeah.
Obviously, Boro failed to score at Portsmouth. I think it's important to make the point here that Boro have the best defence in the Championship. And that same defence was not just leaky last year, it was a shambles at times, wasn't it? I mean, how many times were we banging our head against the wall talking about the shambolic goals that they conceded? I think to be at this stage of the season and for Boro to have the best defence in the Championship, Edwards deserves immense credit for tightening up there. I don't think it's possible, really. And you know, Edwards will openly admit, he has done, even when things have been going well, we're a million miles away from where I want us to be. There's loads of areas for improvement. I want to see things click in the forward third. But I think in the early weeks of the season, you can understand why tightening up at one end has maybe had an impact at the other.
Yeah, and I think there's two things there. I think one is that, as you've rightly pointed out, anybody who watched the videos of Boro last season would immediately say the number one priority for any manager has to be tighten the defence up, make them harder to beat, make them more durable and resilient so that when something goes against them, they don't just collapse like a pack of cards. Because we saw that repeatedly last season. So, you know, I think Rob Edwards, I think he's the type of manager that he wants to get the back line sorted and build from there anyway. But even if he wasn't, I think whoever came through the door this summer, you would have expected them to say, right, number one priority, we have to be harder to beat. We have to be harder to break down. We have to be better organised. We have to concede fewer goals. So that was always going to be priority number one. And it's understandable that a lot of the focus has gone there. And like you say, Edwards and his coaching staff need a big, big pat on the back for the strides that they've made there, because there's undoubtedly been improvement and progress. The other thing with that, and I actually asked Rob Edwards about this at his presser last week, was in some ways, and he agreed with it, to be fair, it feels like it's easier to sort out a defence than it is to sort out an attack. Because to sort out a defence, you know, this is layman's terms, this, and I'm sure, you know, real kind of training ground experts will bridle at it, but put people in the right place, get them organised, make sure they know what they're doing, put an extra body in there if you need it, stress the importance of winning headers, making blocks, all of that. Get a spirit in there so that the players are prepared to do it. That's going to go at least some of the way to making a defensive improvement. You know, if you're well organised in the Championship, you can make yourself hard to beat. Now, at the other end of the pitch, and Rob Edwards did say, look, you know, we have structures in attack. We have things that we want to impress on the players. And, you know, we have things that we want them to do when we're in possession. But to a certain extent, yeah, you're right. It's off the cuff. It's creativity. It's relationships that just build up with players over time, where I know if I pass the ball there, you're going to be making that run, or there's no point in me playing that ball there because that's not really the run my centre forward is going to be making. That takes time, and it's much more impromptu, whereas improving the defence does feel a little bit more like organisation, structure, be in the right place, do the right things. So I think there's an element of that at play as well, that if you're putting a new defence together and a new attack together, which Boro have done in both ends this season, really, there's probably a good chance that the defence is going to at least hit a base level earlier, if that makes any kind of sense.
The challenge, obviously, is improving the attack now while maintaining defensive foundations.
That's it, because, you know, what you don't want to do is get rid of everything good that Boro have been. So, you could, in theory, potentially improve Boro's attacking by getting rid of one of your centre midfielders, throwing a number 10 on, going gung-ho. Well, yeah, that might create more chances. But I'd say there's every chance that instead of shipping 0 point whatever goals a game it is, you'd be shipping 2 a game. You know what I mean? We'd be back to square one. So clearly that's not going to happen. But there are clearly things that Edwards can do and will be doing to try and improve the attacking output of his team. I think the interesting thing then is, would Boro benefit from having a settled attacking lineup for an extended run of games? And that's an interesting one. I don't really know the answer to that. Part of you thinks probably yes. Are we at the stage now where it would actually, who is the number one, number 9? Is Strelic through the middle the way he absolutely wants to go? Well, if it is, make that your starting point and build around there. It has Caliseni now done enough to start 5 games in a row as the number 9. I think, part of me certainly feels that we've probably reached the stage of the season where you need to start settling on something. But then the flip side of that, I guess, is you've got all of these players. You might as well utilise them, but it's 3 games a week. You're going to have to be making changes anyway. So, I do understand that, but I get it when managers will say, I don't have a preferred 11 because what it's for one game is not for the other. I understand all of that. But when a team's developing, I sometimes do think there's a benefit from this. This is going to be us for the next month or so.
I think this next chunk of games, starting obviously against Ipswich a week on Friday, will be revealing, because this is the first chunk now where the first chunk of games, the window's still open. So the squad's in flux. Yeah. The second chunk of games, the window's closed, but new signings are still getting up to speed. This now feels like the first chunk of games where everything's settled down, where new signings have perhaps will not be completely adjusted to the new surroundings, but have had time to find the feet. Yeah, I think come the November international break, it'll be interesting to ask the same questions and look back and say, do we now know? I don't think you'll ever have a truly settled front 3. But I think what we'll find out in the next few games is, can you play Strelic and Conway together? Yeah. If you can, is Strelic at 9 as Conway and one of the 10s the only way, or do you actually have to flip them around? We haven't seen Strelic as a 10 yet. Can Edwards find a way to get the best out of Morgan Whittaker? Is Caliseni best as a 9 or a 10? And can he be as effective from the off as he has been coming off the bench in games? Can Sonty Jansson put like those really promising flashes we've seen into like a more complete round of performance? I don't think we'll get the answers to all of those questions in the next chunk of games, but I think we'll find out more about some of those, which will probably give us a better idea. And I think that'll give us a better idea moving forward as to, and I suspect here it's a bit of both. I think it'll probably give us a better idea as to whether the issues are personnel, whether it's a structural thing, whether it's a bit of both and it's just about finding your feet, whether Boro are better served playing 4-3-3 and getting an extra midfielder in there to maybe give Hackney a bit more license to move forward, or can you play 4-3-3, drop Morris in, play Nipan as one of the midfielders and get an extra midfielder? I think these are all kind of answers that are questions we might get answers to in the next few weeks.
And it's a little bit chicken and egg, isn't it? In that you can argue that none of the forwards have really had a real chance to get into absolutely top form and make themselves, if you like, undroppable. But then the flip side of that is that actually none of them have really been in that kind of top form to make themselves. We've had flashes from all of them. We've had some real flashes from Strelic. Senna scored some excellent goals. Nipan's looked brilliant at times. Hansen's had little cameos, like you say. Whittaker's been in and out, but he's definitely had moments. And yet none of them, if you were marking all of them out of 10, I don't think you'd have any of them on a 9. I'm not absolutely sure you'd have any of them on an absolute 8 at the minute. They've been in and out. So then, it is understandable that Edwards is maybe looking at it thinking, well, at the minute, I don't really feel like any of them have absolutely said to me, I have to play in this role because, I'm superb doing it week in, week out. We haven't quite reached that level with any of them yet. And the hope clearly is that one or two of them in this next chunk take that next step and put in consistently, excellent performances to basically make it pretty much impossible for Edwards to leave them out.
The other thing, and I don't think this is a call for perspective as such, because I don't think there's been an overreaction, but I think it's worth remembering that when the fixtures were released in June, the big thing was Boro had the most difficult start.
Yeah.
I think Opta figured out that Boro had the most difficult start in the Championship. Well, here we are, 9 games in, and Boro have played the teams that are currently 4th, 5th, 7th, 8th, and 12th.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
to have played 5 of the other 11 teams in the top half in the first 9 games, I think it's just a reminder, really, as there are going to be like easier challenges to come. I know they've played Sheffield United, but Boro haven't played any of Sheff Wednesday, Oxford, Blackburn, Derby, Wrexham. You know, those teams that are down there. But I haven't played those games yet. And I know, like, you know, the table is in such flux at this stage. But Boro's start has barely been kind. We cover Sunderland as well. And one of the big things at Sunderland has been, for all of they've started really well, how much have they had an easy start? What's going to happen when the more difficult fixtures come? Well, you can't throw that at Boro, can you? They haven't played Coventry yet. They haven't played Leicester yet, but they haven't had an easy start.
No, absolutely. And you know, it's only really been in the last couple of games where we've really been talking about the attack. I mean, you know, Norwich away, Boro for an hour attacked brilliantly. Preston, you know, the second half in Preston with the comeback, they looked a real threat. So, you know, it's not like Boro have been misfiring in attack all season. They absolutely haven't. I think it's just that you're probably reflecting on the attack because the defense has been so good and it's incredibly hard to pick any holes or faults there. And B, there has been a kind of slowing of attack of effectiveness running into this international break. I think that's fair that, you know, perhaps two of Boro's worst attacking displays in the season have come in the 3 games before the break. So it's inevitable you're going to reflect on that a little bit.
What do you make of the table? You know, Tony Mowbray, 10 games. Well, we're only 1 game away from that. Mowbray allows us to look at the table. So Coventry top, look good, 19 points.
Yeah, and I don't think it's hindsight to say that before the start of the season we would have fancied Coventry. You know, they've been right up there. They were right in amongst it last season. Obviously, they've got managerial stability. They managed to hold on to a lot of their key players. I don't think it's a surprise. You know, I would have had Coventry as one of my top 6 at the start of the season.
You've then got 7 points separating Boro in 2nd and Southampton in 17th. So it almost feels pointless, to discuss Preston 4th, Stoke 5th, QPR 6th. But for all you're saying there, no one's surprised to see Coventry there. Don't think there have been too many having Stoke, Preston and QPR in the top 6 after 9 games. Because we're a fifth of the way through the season now.
Yeah.
That's a significant enough spell to judge teams.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I would have pre-season, I would have all them 3 finishing in the bottom half. I'd still be surprised if any of them made the top 6. Stoke have a chance. I think they're a lot better than I thought they had.
They looked good last week.
And in Mark Robbins, I do think they've got a very good championship manager who knows what it takes in this league and, you know, was consistently up there at Coventry. So I could see Stoke being in and around it. Leicester look good and I think will be in the top 6. Ipswich seem to have shook off their rocky start. I think it'd be really interesting to see that Friday night game at the Riverside, what they're like and what Boro look like. I think Ipswich look like a side who are going to get themselves into the top 6. Southampton are the ones who still haven't clicked. You know, you still look at that squad and think, well, they will. But like you say, we're a fifth of the way through the season now. If they don't have a good couple of months between now and Christmas, then they're going to leave themselves with an awful lot to do in the second half of the season. And then obviously at the other end, I think Wrexham and Birmingham have probably been poorer than I thought they might be.
Yeah, I agree.
Sheffield Wednesday have shown an awful lot more fight than I thought they would. You know, I thought they'd be absolutely strung out with a washing. I still think they'll probably go down, but they're by no, you know, those players deserve a hell of a lot of credit for what they're doing there. And obviously Sheffield United have been, you know, an utter shambles, which a few people were saying that maybe they'd be the poorest of that type of team who you'd expect to be up there, but I don't think anyone saw them being as bad as they've been. So yeah, there's, there are some surprises in there, but it does feel like it's starting to settle down now.
They'll sort. I don't think they'll be in the top 6 now, Sheffield, but they'll sort themselves out. I mean, they won't go down, will they?
They'll have. I mean, never say never. Look at Luton last season when you just kept on thinking, well, they'll get themselves out of it. Bringing Wilder in seems like let's avoid the absolute worst case scenario appointment, isn't it? At the very least, you'd think Wilder will steady the ship enough that I can't see them going down. No.
Lost 2 from 3, though, I think. Is it?
I know, yeah. Well, that's it, yeah.
Maybe 3.
Maybe he needs to stop booting balls at kids.
That
was one of the more bizarre ones, wasn't
it? God, yeah. Which summer signing has most impressed you?
That's a good question.
I think Britain for me. I
was going to say, and it's a very similar kind of choice, Alfie Jones.
Yeah.
I think obviously the exciting ones are Nipan and Hansen and Strelec and Seni, and like I say, we have seen flashes from all of them. I think there's very talented players in all of them, but I think the reason why going back to how we started this vid, I think one of the key reasons why the defence has functioned so well is because who came into it? Callum Britton, Alfie Jones, Matt Targett, championship experience, all 3 ready to go. We're never going to, be fazed by playing at the Riverside or whatever formation was thrown at them or whatever they were asked to do. I think all 3 of them have been superb signings of the type that, is not supposedly the Boro project really, but that there was an understanding that actually we need that type of player to improve this defence. So to a degree, I think you can pick any of those 3. I would just go with Jones because he's just looked so unruffleable, really. Like, straight in there. Looks like he's been playing there for Boro forever. In a central defensive unit that has had to chop and change all over the place, really. He's played with Lennon, he's played with Fry, he's played with Edmondson, he's played with Targett as a centre half, he's played with Aylan, and yet it just hasn't knocked him at all off his stride. So I'd go with him.
Yeah, I think Jones has been brilliant. Such an understated signing, really, wasn't it, at the time? But I think he's been brilliant, and he's been a constant, and that has been so important when players have dropped around him. Edmondson, Fry, Lenihan, Ayling has been excellent as well. I think if we were talking about best performers of the season so far, well, Ayling undoubtedly immediately springs to mind, especially comparing that with the difficult season he had last year. I think Britain as well, though, because he's been, and I think there has to be a lot more to come from him in terms of attacking output, assists. But I think he's a perfect fit on that side, isn't he? So Targett and Britton have both made the system work so well in those early weeks of the season.
And I think that clearly both of them can play as orthodox fullbacks, but they've looked so good in those wing-back roles that I think that's probably another reason why when you talk about do we need to go 4-3-3, I think Edwards will be understandably reluctant to make any real changes to his defensive shape because it's suited the centre-halves, but it's also suited those 2 as wing-backs. Yes, they're not Ryan Giles style where they might as well be played as wingers. They're not that type of wing-back. But they've certainly offered enough going forward to be big factors in what Boro are doing in that side of the field. But they've just been so solid defensively.
I think the signing of you mentioned him. I think the signing I've most enjoyed watching has been Nipan.
Yeah,
straight away, you just see the class there, the quality, and
he's the one with the highest
every game. But you can tell straight away, can't you? Like Dork last season, very different players, obviously, but straight away you think, there's a real catch there. There's a real find.
Yeah, and exciting with him in that, he is very young. He never played in the Championship, never played English football before. You forget with Dork, it took him a couple of months really to get into it and find his feet. He wasn't in the team, regularly really until probably this end of the year towards, November, December time. So I think Nipan's exciting because goodness only knows what the limits of his potential are. And, if he improves as the season goes on, like you feel that he might, then, he could second half of the season, he could be an absolutely massive player for Boro.
And I think the same with Strelec. Obviously, we have not seen the best of Strelec yet. He's still getting the grips with the Championship. He's still getting the grips with Boro's attack. Edwards is still getting the grips with how best to get the best out of him. I'm excited by what we've seen, promising the little flashes, haven't we? And that is exciting. You know what Strelec is capable of, what Strelec can do in the Championship once he gets once Edwards finds the best way.
He feels like a player who it's not inconceivable that he could go on the kind of goal scoring run that Latalath got on the back end of that season, doesn't it? You know, and he's clearly got that goal scorer's kind of vision and that technical ability that you need to play up there. I think you're right. I think Boro still need to work out how best to feed him and who best to have around him. I don't think they've quite got there yet. But you'd like to think that would come.
It's early doors, and Boro had a hugely successful and busy summer transfer window. But Kieran Scott and Chris Jones, in the interview they did with the club, both talked about how they look forward to January immediately. They've already got an idea of a couple of areas that might need work. What other? What do you think they'll be? I mean, straight away you look at right back and think you need maybe cover for Britain.
Cover there.
At that point.
Yeah.
You know, Ayling's not a right back anymore. You're then looking probably at Sammy Silvera. So right back. Where else?
Right back feels like somewhere that you do need. Long term, I think you're always going to be thinking about centre mid, because long term, you know, if Boro don't go up this season, surely Hayden Hackney is off. Surely Hackney is off. So I know you've got Alan Brown in at the moment, and there's the potential for a deal to be done there.
Kante is still very inexperienced and getting the grips with things.
Kante is one for the future, if you like. So, you know, if you're talking about succession planning, I think if you've got, Boro will have one or two players like they have with Aidan Morris, where they're looking at them thinking, they're who long-term I'd be interested in to be our long-term central midfielder if we needed to make that change because Hayden Hackney left. If one of them you felt now's the best time to make that move because of their contract situation where they're at, or because the team that they're at the minute struggling and might be willing to do it, you know, that's the type of thing that maybe you'll examine. Is January the right time to do that deal? And if it is, then let's get it done because he's the player we want to hang our hat on. A bit like when they signed, you know, the timing of Morris coming in really wasn't ideal, was it? Because he was coming off the back of a lot of football in the MLS rather. He hadn't had that break. You know, if you could have chosen it, you probably wouldn't have signed Morris quite when you did. But Boro knew they had to because that was the window that was open for them to get that deal done. It might be that January opens that for a central midfielder who they think is the long-term future of the club. But that's not to say they're going to be going out in January thinking, God, we need to sign a central midfielder. Clearly they don't. But I think that's one area where long-term they'll be looking at it and thinking, you know, we might have to make a really significant signing there at some point.
And there'll be longer-term thinking at left-back as well because Matt Targett's loan expires next summer. He might stay, he might not. Max Arston, good start. You know, can you get him in January? You couldn't get him.
I was going to say, that's the one, isn't it? That they might well look to go back to. And then, of course, it's the centre-half coming in as well, which it's easy to forget about and overlook. Excellent.
Well, last international break, we had the Milos Velkovic quiz question. England are in Latvia next week. I don't think there's any Boro Latvians, is there? I can't think of any. Marian Pahars.
I was going to say Marian Pahars was Latvian.
He's the only Premier League Latvian I can think of.
I'm not sure. Any Latvian links to Boro? Drop us in the comments.
This is a test for whether Sean Wilson watches and listens to Are My Boro. Because if he does, we'll know.
We'll get it. Yeah, any Latvian trialists or...
There's no obvious. We're not missing any obvious.
Boro played in Riga. I don't think they will have done.
Tamo
game in Riga once back in the day, but not Boro in Europe never went to Riga.
No.
What I must do before we end, I know we're going to wrap up in a second. I was gig going last Friday night at Stockton, in the Q Bar in Stockton. I went to see Dodgy, which is a proper back in the day one, isn't it? Good enough and staying out for the summer and all that. Yeah. And I had at least 3 avid video watchers come up and have a good bit of crack, and it was great. It was really, really good. I apologise profusely because I didn't get their names, largely because I was a fair bit in on the red stripe by then. So, I apologise if I was talking nonsense, but B, it was great to see you. And if any of you ever see me or Dom at games or whatever, please do come up, because it's great to know that you're out there and we're not just speaking into the vacuum.
And if you ever see us at a gig, get us a pint.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not pussy. I'm not pussy. If I'm at a gig, I'll have pretty much anything.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I know we do it every time, but our special offer, our latest subscription offer, is running across the bottom. It's just a fiver for 5 months, 40% off an annual subscription that gets you full access to all of our Boro coverage. You get access to the app on there as well. It's ad light. There's a page turner app. There's a page turner experience on there as well. So it's well worth it, I think. And your support is much appreciated, as we say each time. And do get in touch if there's anything you want us to discuss going forward on vids and pods to come. But thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll be back next week. Take care.